Hello, wonderful nonprofit heroes and rock stars. This is Tom Check with Greater Impact Consulting, coming to you today to dive deep into Nonprofit Success Pack and specifically the General Accounting Unit module of NPSP. If you don't know what I'm talking about already, go ahead and check out the other video I posted around an overview of NPSP and all the objects that are involved in it. Today, we're focusing on General Accounting Units, GAUs. And these are a really important part of NPSP, especially for us nonprofits, around transparency of dollars. Where are our dollars supposed to be going? And a lot of times, especially with grants or major donors, they want their funds to go to a specific use. Maybe it's programming, maybe it's capital campaign, maybe it's administrative overhead. But either way, regardless of what they want it to go to, those buckets are really important for us to keep track of as nonprofit professionals. And it can be kind of tiresome to do it, especially if you're entering all your data in Salesforce and then you're having to go into like an Excel sheet to track all of those designations. So what we're going to talk about today is the solution that Salesforce has come up with, which is General Accounting Units. Now, believe you me, I'm guilty just as much as the next person of in giant, wonderful grants that I get, making little silly notes like this, right? This is the breakdown of funding that I'm responsible to report on. And that's, at least I wrote it down. It's somewhere, but that's not very useful, especially when it's time to report, whether it's to my board, to the granting organization, or just to check in on like, how much money does each bucket have? And so the way that we deal with this is through General Accounting Units, where we basically take this little note that I've got and we turn it into an actionable object in Salesforce that automatically calculates totals and gives us a lot of data transparency that's easy to report on without wasting a bunch of extra time, which means that you get to focus more on your mission and less on your database. So how do we set these up? First and foremost, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go up to your app launcher up in the top left-hand corner and type in General Accounting Units. Now, if you don't see this, it's either because you don't have Nonprofit Success Pack installed or your user profile doesn't have access to this object, and you would need to go resolve that access issue. We're going to go ahead and open this in a new tab real quick. And I've already set up a couple of GAUs in here, but we're going to go through and set up additional ones just to show you what it's like. When we think about GAUs, oftentimes the initial thought is to go ahead and just make this reflect your accounting chart of accounts. That you can totally do it that way, but a lot of times when we talk to our donors, we're not talking chart of accounts. We're not talking this is our rent cost and this is our technology software subscription costs, and those buckets don't make as much sense a lot of times for our donors. So our buckets tend to be a little bigger. Administrative overhead, our different programs that we're asking for specific funding towards, our general fund, right? Our slush fund that we can apply towards anything, which is what most of our donations end up being. So once we open our General Accounting Units, all you have to do is click on New. Once you're in here, you just give it a name. So I'm going to say that this is program and that this is going to be food pantry program. Give it a description if that's useful to you and your team. The most important thing is to make sure it's active and that the name makes sense to you. You're not going to worry about any of this additional stuff down below at this point. Hit save and it'll take you to that page. Pretty straightforward. That's what I like about this, is that creating a new General Accounting Unit is pretty straightforward. And if we go back, now we'll see that we've got program food pantry, program education, program mentoring services, administrative fundraising costs, general fund. Great. So how do we use these now that we've got our buckets set up in Salesforce? Well, on an opportunity or a campaign, which we'll talk about in just a moment, you're going to want to scroll down to your related section, which is either going to be a tab next to details and chatter, or like mine, it might be on the right-hand side here. And you're going to look for GAU allocations. Now, if you don't see that, don't worry. I'm going to show you in just a moment how to add it to your page, because by default, it's probably not there. You're going to click this little down arrow and you're going to say Manage Allocations. And that takes you to this awesome page, which makes it really easy to manage the allocations for this opportunity. So it tells us what opportunity we're on right up here, 2020 Community Foundation Grant. It gives us the amount. It pulls that directly from our opportunity. And all we have to do is search for the bucket, the General Accounting Unit, that we want to apply stuff to. So my note said that 20% goes to administrative, 20% goes to education programming, and 20% goes to mentoring services programming. So I'm just going to go ahead and search for that. I'm going to add a second row. I'm going to add a third row. This one's going to be program. And the nice part about the search is you don't have to type it in perfectly. It'll automatically find anything that starts with what you've got. All right, so this $10,000 grant, 20% of it is designated for administrative. Now I can type in the 20% or I can type it in the amount. If I want to mix and match, it does allow me to do that, although generally that does make things a little confusing, but you can't enter both. If you enter an amount, you can't enter a percent, and if you enter a percent, you cannot enter an amount. It'll be a grayed out box. I'm going to stick with percentages because that's what's in my note. And you'll see that this amount down at the bottom is reduced every time I enter one of those numbers. So now it's down to 0 because that's 100%. If I remove that, there's 4,000 left in there. And then all I have to do is hit save. And then if I scroll down in my GAU allocations, I see that administrative has 2,000, the program education has 4,000, and the program mentoring services has 4,000. Now that's fantastic, right? I can run a report on that, but it's still pretty time consuming to go through and enter this on every opportunity. So let's talk about some different ways to do this. And one of the ways that a lot of us do our fundraising is through campaigns. So if I open up a campaign here, oops, not that one, I created this end of year fundraiser campaign. This is brand new. I haven't entered any opportunities on it, and that's kind of an important part of this, is to make sure that you don't have any opportunities already in a campaign that you're going to set up GAUs for. So when I look in my related list, I don't see GAU allocations in here. Oh no, what do? I'm going to go to my setup, and for this you can go, just click on the cog icon and say Edit Object. That'll take you directly to the object manager of setup and into campaign, so you don't have to go search for it. And then if I go into page layouts, I'm going to find the page layout for the campaigns I'm working with. For this is going to be just a standard campaign. And there's two important pieces we want to focus on in here. One, we're looking for related lists. So if we click on related lists on this little sidebar here, we'll see all the different related lists that are available, and we see this GAU allocations in there. Fantastic, that's what we're looking for. We click, we drag that to whatever position we want it to be in our related lists. And then we also, really importantly, want to go in and click this little wrench icon. And that's important because we need the Manage Allocations button added to this. So we'll go in, click Manage Allocations, add that button, and whoops, we'll also go ahead and add any additional fields that we want in here. So I might say amount, I might say General Accounting Unit. Those are probably the two most important for me. We've got the button set up, hit OK, and hit Quick Save. Click Yes to overwrite users' functions. And then when I go back to my end of year fundraiser and I refresh my page, what I'll see is that I now have a related list for GAU allocations with a little button that says Manage Allocations. All right, so now we're going to click on Manage Allocations right here. And similarly, we're gonna, if we're doing a capital campaign, we would make our GAU unit for this fundraiser, we would just make 100% of it capital campaign. For us, we're gonna say that this is for our food pantry program, and so we're gonna designate all funds, oops, get to the right one there. We're gonna designate all funds to the food pantry. Oops, let's go program, there we go, there's the food pantry. Get out of that. Why is that popping up? All right. I'm going to say that that's 100%. And I'm going to hit save. So now I've got this GAU allocation. And if I go in and I add a new opportunity to this fundraiser, and I say it's a donation, and we're just going to say that John Doe, one of our awesome donors, gave us $125,000 to help fund our food pantry. We'll say that this all happened very recently and that we have a closed won opportunity. So now when I hit save, what we'll see is that our John Doe major gift, when we open it up, should have a GAU allocation already for the food pantry. And there it is. 100% of this goes to food pantry. Now on that campaign, on that GAU allocation, I could have set up percentages for some food pantry, some administrative costs, whatever your campaign is designated to fund. That's the buckets that you set up on your campaign GAU allocations. And then any opportunity that you add into that campaign will be automatically updated. A couple of good things to know is that if you've got an opportunity that already has GAU allocations and you add it to a campaign, it respects the original GAU allocations that are on the opportunity. So it's not going to suddenly pull in information from the campaign to overwrite what's on the opportunity. Also, like I said, you don't want to have opportunities already in there. These need to be new campaign, new opportunities. Otherwise, they're not going to update effectively. And if that campaign or if that opportunity's already got a recurring donation GAU allocation, again, Salesforce respects the recurring donation over the campaign GAU allocations. So all of this is really cool. Now I can go in and I can look at my general accounting unit and I can actually take a peek at what is full of what. How much money do we have in stuff? But we're going to notice something. While here it says I've got this amount in the food pantry program, when I click on this, I'm going to see that there's $0 in here. Why is that? That's because the Nonprofit Success Pack rolls these totals up overnight once a day. So that's really important to know. You're not going to see immediately the reflections that you've updated here. This is a bigger picture. This isn't an immediate thing, but you can force it to go ahead and update. And to do that, you would go into your app setting or your app launcher again, and if you search for NPSP settings and click on that, that'll take you into a place where we can manually roll up the allocations batch so that all of those totals come through right now instead of waiting for them to come through at night. In general, if I wasn't doing a demo, I would just wait for this stuff to happen overnight. But because we are, time sensitive here, we'll go ahead and do it manually. So if I scroll down to bulk data processes, roll up allocations batch, and run batch. Great, now it says 100% done, and if I go back to my program food pantry GAU and hit refresh, I should see that it now has allocations in it. And there we go. And if we were to open any of the other GAUs, we would also see that in there. While we're in the Nonprofit Success Pack settings, though, there's another really important thing to know about GAUs in here, and that's that you can set default GAUs so that you don't have to go in and manually enter them on every new opportunity, especially if they're not in a campaign that has GAU allocation set up. So if you've got a website that has a donor option, you're not necessarily going to know if they want to fund food pantry or whatever. So a lot of times we'll just put all of that into general fund. And we can set it up so that we don't have to do that manually, so that any new opportunities that come in automatically have this. If we go to Donations, GAU Allocations, and we click on Edit, there's a couple of things we'll want to make sure of in here. One, any opportunity record types that shouldn't get default GAU allocations, like in-kind products and in-kind services. Almost never do we give those general accounting units because we're not actually getting dollars for those. And you might have some other ones that you don't specifically want to put GAUs on. If your memberships shouldn't get a GAU for some reason that you don't want them to show up in your general fund or whatever, great, go ahead and exclude those as well. You can also exclude specific opportunity types, which is one of those drop-down menus, so that say you've got new donors and you don't automatically want them to have GAU allocations because you reach out to every donor to ask them what part of your organization they want to fund. Great, you can say that new customers don't get GAU allocations, and you can actually set up your opportunity types for program funder, administrative funder, whatever, and set those up as defaults. And then to enable default allocations, you're going to want to come down here and you're going to want to check this box, and you have to give it a default. What is going to be the default when nothing else is selected? We're going to say that this is a general fund for us, for my organization. Our general fund is our default GAU allocation. And then I'm going to hit save. And now the cool part is that when I go ahead and enter a new opportunity, as long as it's a donation, as long as it's not an in-kind product or in-kind service, all I have to do is enter real basic information real quick. Let's say that Doe gave us this as well. Give it a close date of today. Let's say that it's $10 closed one. If I hit save, now I don't have to go in and manually set GAUs for this donation. If I scroll down and wait for the GAU related list to show up, there it goes. Because we set our default as the general fund, it's automatically in there. And that's pretty cool. So that's how we can automate some of this. The second part of what I'm always worried about with our nonprofits and your nonprofit is how do we make this data easy to access so that it's transparent and you don't have to go search for it all the time. And for that, we're going to run a report. Now, reports are really great because they are something that you can automatically update. You can open them as often as you need, and you don't have to go run a bunch of new calculations in an Excel sheet, right? Saves you a bunch of time. So if I just search for GAU allocations, I'm just going to make a general report here. And for me, there's a couple of specific things I want to see. First off, if I'm the executive director or the development director, I'm going to want to maybe see all GAU allocations, or just my team's, or just mine. You choose. On my outline, I probably often want to group by the general accounting unit so that I can see by bucket, essentially, how much money each one of these has. We're getting there. We see some stuff, but nothing really useful yet because these are just the names. So we're going to want to add, obviously, the amount. All right, now we're starting to see some interesting stuff. And I can get rid of the GAU name and just see, okay, here is a useful report. It's really basic, but it's really useful. So I can see that my administrative, my general fund each have one allocation. My food pantry has two. It's got a blank one because we've got a blank opportunity out there in that campaign. We've got mentoring services, and all told, I can look down here right at the bottom and I can see my total for all of my GAUs. I can also see a subtotal for each GAU. That's really useful. And then, once I save and run this, I can go ahead and actually just subscribe to this report so that it shows up in my inbox on the first of the month, every month, and I don't even have to go look for it in Salesforce. I don't even have to log into Salesforce. This report will just show up automatically right in time for my board report. And I just do that by clicking export on the little drop down, or I'm sorry, not export, subscribe, and entering the information for when I want it to show up: daily, weekly, monthly, what day of the week, what time. So really simple, really straightforward way to make it so that the information you need shows up right in your inbox. Most of this is happening automatically once you set up a campaign, once you set up your default GAU allocations. You'll not have to do a ton of work to make this happen. And you've got really great transparency for your grantors, your donors, and your board of directors, your stakeholders, without having to do a bunch of work on your side. And that allows you to spend more time focusing on your mission and less time wading through your database. And that's what we're all about at Greater Impact Consulting. So that's all I've got for you today. I wish you the very best. Feel free to reach out if you run into any snags in the setup process. I'd love to help you out. And otherwise, I will plan on connecting with you again soon. Until then, stay awesome.